So how do we make low poly models? First we start for reference. You can either draw it or find one online. At a minimum, find one that has a side view and a front view to help guide us through our modeling process. We're going to show the process for modeling, UV wrapping, texture painting, and rigging. Starting with the head, we're going to use a simple method of placing a cube and adding a subdivision divider. Yes, there are many ways to do it, but it's the method that I learned best. So the idea here is you're going to use S to shrink or increase the lives, and then we're going to use G to move the vertices separately. Throughout this video, we are going to be making like changes to the shape as we go. The idea here is that you need a side reference. Side references allow you to align your model to what it should actually look like. I best recommend finding one online as mentioned, or just drawing one if you're an artist. I'm not as much so I had to get one from online for this part of the video. Although I do draw some of my own, it did take quite a while, and I don't recommend it unless you're really good at it. Without the side reference, it can be very hard getting started. I first learned my blender from a video channel called Rocasio, and he made his whole model just from the front reference, which is really hard if you're new to it. I started thinking I could just do that. Turned out quickly I was very wrong, and getting a side reference really helps. I heard people say you can use a back reference as well. I don't know if that's really needed. I think one at 45 degrees would help envision what you need to do for when it comes to not the flat front or side, but at an angle. You can kind of have some trouble, and especially when you're starting out here. And this whole process is going to take quite a while, as it's more of just figuring out how should this actually look like. And I think it's actually a pretty good learning experience. Moving on here, we're going to start with a cylinder of just 8 sides to keep it pretty simple. And we're going to line it up just under our character. And as you can see, we're going to delete half of it. And we're going to mirror it, so when we make changes to one side, it happens to the other. Saves a lot of time. And we're going to add, so I think it's curl R. And that allows you to create another line within your mesh, so you can better align it to your actual reference as you're going through there, because the basic cylinder doesn't have enough subdivisions for everything you need, and it often changes. So the idea here is you closely follow the reference as much as possible, but also take a look back and just see like, hey, does this look right? Because I had to do this a couple times and make some pretty major changes as we go through this. It's more of like, how did I make this? The process of making it, honestly. And I didn't want to make it a second time just so I can have a perfect run, so I can show you like the process, like the thought process of how to create this. As you can see, the side view of our character compared to our front character is actually, it looks very wide. Like, it just doesn't look right. So getting to the arms, we're gonna select like a circular area of where our arms are gonna be, and we're gonna use loop tools to make it into a circle. It's pretty fast there, so I might show a picture what it's called. And then we're gonna just go through this back part and just make sure that we have like enough subdivisions so we can make the body look more correct. And then now we can get to the arm, so we're gonna just extrude out and then make the arm a little bit skinnier, and then at the wrist we're gonna extrude it to look more like a proper arm. You might be familiar with this hand if you watched that YouTube channel I mentioned, because that's where I kind of like got the hand from in my drawing. I was having a really hard time with that and just decided just to use that because it looks pretty fine for a low poly model. And then for the thumb, we're just extruding a bunch of squares, which kind of bends as it's gonna go. And once we get the texture painting, we're gonna start like drawing on what your fingers would look like onto this hand. And then for this we're gonna use Control B to create the wrist for the joint, so that when the body deforms, those lines actually make it bend correctly. And now we're on to the part where we kind of fix the mesh a little bit, where we bring in the chest a little bit and move things a little bit back so that the neck actually connects to, like, you know, where the spine would be. It's not going to be like, there's not going to be just a spot of like nothingness behind the neck, or just meat. Whatever. And now we're on the exterior body. To start up the legs, we're going to use a cylinder and we're going to shrink it down, and then we're going to mirror it. It's a little bit confusing with the mirror. Sometimes it's actually inside your cylinder, so you have to move it around until you kind of get it free. And then we're just going to match these cylinders to like the shape of our character's legs generally. This part was kind of tricky for me, as it can be hard to make it look right. So I'm following closer what I learned from that YouTuber channels mentioned. This is actually probably my second build I've made, and this type of tutorials can be really great for getting started, but after that it's really good to try and build some stuff on your own. This video is more just covering like all of those basics that I learned, and maybe some people help. But going back to the legs, we have extruded upwards and we're starting to create like the waist area of where our character is going to be. And we're going to get the general shape, as we figured out that the model is not going to match the side reference, because the side reference isn't really amazing. You know, it wasn't surprising because I'm not an artist, so it was pretty rough making it. And then we're going to start the feet area for the shoes. We're just going to leave it just like that for the moment, and then start with the ankles, so we can start creating kind of like a bend to how you would stand, so you don't lock up your shoulders all the time. And this is going to be just a temporary placement for that. We can move the where the joint's going to be up and down until it looks right. Right now it's just like, okay, let's just get it placed down, and then I'll slide it up and down until it looks right. And right here, and what it allows is, so when you bend your character on your rig, it's so the material deforms on that joint, making it look more like natural per se, as it can be for a 2D model. And then we're gonna bend up the back of the shoes to kind of match the picture that we're looking at, as it's gonna be like the top of the soles, and then we're gonna move the main waist a little bit forward. And to make the shape of the, okay, now that we're onto the shoes properly, we're gonna pull the shoe forward. We're just gonna grab all those edges and extrude, and then we're gonna start bending the sides to create kind of like where your shoe curves down on each side. And the next thing we do is we're cutting out the bottom sole, so that when we actually start painting, we can kind of see where each of these like lines should line up. Really helps it. You can also mark those as seams if you like to, if you want to create like a complete division between those two. As if you didn't, the colors would kind of like be pixelated between the two layers. Now that we got that done, we can start joining our character together. So to do that, it's pretty simple. You just need to combine both of the objects, and then once you combine both of the objects, you can start selecting both of the vertices and just merging them by using shift and go to merge, or you can just click M, which is another quick shortcut. And as we zoom out, we can see that there's some like things we can fix with this. Like, it seems like the bottom lace is a little bit too forward, so we're gonna move it back so it looks more appropriate, or how it should look like. And there's a little bit of a gap that was created because of that. Now that we have that, we can also take a look at the side of the waist and see what we should change here. I cut out a lot of the outside, like, you know, just looking around. But as you like make your models, just look at it and see like, hey, is this something I like? I know I've said this already, but I had to cut it so many times, just because it would make the video like twice as long if I didn't do that. And now we're gonna get with the joint of the elbow. This is going to be just about the same as you expect from before. Nothing really special, just that those lines that go outward tells you where you want to go. Okay, now we're on to the hair. So to do this, we selected all of the tiles on top of the head, and then we do Ctrl D to duplicate them. And then we're going to create a new object using Ctrl P. And once you have that, you have your basically hair. You can start extruding and moving vertices around to match your reference. You see, like, and the side reference is actually really useful. Again, I would not be able to come up with this pretty well on the spot. It would be pretty tough. And we're gonna leave a little hole up here for where the ear is gonna be. Because I was thinking maybe you can just have the ear go through the hair, but it would create a lot more work figuring out how to not make it look weird or incorrect. So I just thought I'll leave this gap here. I think that's how it should look like anyways. And this initial hairstyle is gonna be like kind of just like me creating something just to have. Once I have enough like subdivision lines, I'm gonna start matching it to the actual reference. At the moment, I just want to see like what can I do if this is look right, and just messing around with the general shape. And it's important to show this because as you create these hairstyles, it can be kind of hard to figure out what to do, and just creating something helps get a little bit familiar with that. So now that we're done with that, we're gonna start moving around the hair on the outside, as it's no longer very circular on the sides, especially because we started messing with the front right of the hair. And so we're gonna go to the back half and just match it up, and then we're gonna pull the hair a little bit forward so it's not so like skin tight to the actual model. You want to make sure that it doesn't look like your character is just wearing a helmet, as that would be pretty funny. So now that we got this like feeling like how we want it, we're gonna start matching it. So this looks a little bit weird because I actually didn't do this until later on. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take those vertice points and you're just gonna match it to whatever reference that you're using. This looks a lot better than initially. But you just gotta trust the process. Note that this face that you're seeing right now for this model it does get changed throughout the process because it looks goofy, and it took me a little bit to realize how can I make this actually look nice at the moment. And now we're going to the ears. So the ears is basically just a hexagon that we're gonna make very small and just place where the ear should be. This keeps it really simple, and again we're using the mirror, which is like, it makes things really perfect because changes happen from one to the other, saves lots of time, and you just want to angle the ears so it has like and now we're gonna get into UV unwrapping. So UV unwrapping is like a process of its own, but what we're gonna do is create a material, and then we're gonna assign a picture, and then that's gonna be our color chart. After we got that, we can start marking our seam lines. To kind of understand how the seam lines work is, imagine you have a 3D object and you want to make it into like an origami, but it was like animals people make with papers. Of the basic idea is that each you're basically cutting it out to find each part, but as we do this, we're gonna find that it's more of just like how you think you want to cut it out. Like you want basically each piece kind of be its own place on the cardboard, and you don't want any like weird shapes. So this thing of the arm right here, see how you notice that it really stretches out far. So we're gonna delete some lines here, and then we're gonna make it into like a proper cylinder so we can put our seam lines around it. This will make our cylinder into like, we're gonna unwrap it into like a paper sheet. So we're gonna add some seam lines that goes right down the center, And then we're gonna get the bottom side of the hands because we want to make this all one color. Another key idea with these seam lines is if you want a region of the body to be a specific color, you should mark it out. So for example, this can be the bottom of your hands, or it can be the layout of the clothes as well on your character. Because when you mark these seam lines, I think I've mentioned, you notice that when you actually start texture painting and use the bucket, it creates a really nice solid line throughout your mesh, and without the seam lines, it will be pretty pixelated on its border, which doesn't look as great. It's still okay, but it makes it harder to use the paint bucket too if you don't do that. But what I'm doing here at the back is I'm just seeing that it doesn't look right, so I'm gonna delete some lines and then stretch it out, just so when I unwrap it, it comes out as a pretty clean surface. Right here we're marking the back, and now we're getting to the face. So we're going to start on UV unwrapping our face. We can see the old layer, and then we're going to make a new one, which is like a little bit lower on the face, but also wider, so I can get the shape of the eyes. And you notice that the eyes are cut off. We fix that by assigning it real quick to the material. After we do that, we're going to get to the hair, and we're basically going to cut it into two pieces, inside and outside. And it'd be kind of ugly how I did this. If I were you, I would add more seam lines, but see, once we unwrap by clicking U, you can see the hair is kind of a mess there, so we unwrapped it again on its own. And now we're onto texture painting. So now that we have that, we can click each region, and then we click that blue square towards the texture paint on the top of your screen, and it allows you to use the paint bucket on the specific regions that we want to quickly get our base colors. Speeds up the progress a lot, and definitely recommend it. Now we're done with that, we're gonna get to the face. So this does go back to the old cutout of the face, just to show you how do we assign the face picture. So we want a PNG reserved just for the face on its own, because later on in the next video we're going to get into face animations, so you want a separate PNG so we can move that UV map onto. Now we look right here, this is how, see how it's 10.24, that's the size you want on your art app, and on this page you can see how the regions cut out in each squares. Those map to the color chart that we saw in our UV unwrap. And then once you understand that, it's pretty simple to make your face animations, because what you're doing is you need to know how far to move the UV of your face. So once you block out whatever on your art app to have the same dimensions as the UV map, as that color chart you saw, it's pretty easy to move this from one square to another square. So now that we're done with that, we'll get that into the next video. We're just going to continue for texture painting. And right here is just like a little technique I kind of just learned with the strings, where if you put these lines, it really adds a lot of detail to your model. Now we're just going to go with now we're just painting these top straps here. I ran into an issue where the paint keeps changing its color, so it really took me a while to match it again. And now we're gonna start texture painting the shoes. So I think it's Curl X. It allows you to sample a color from that picture that we're using back there. It helps you with painting. Honestly, I've been having a lot of problems where I couldn't get consistent colors, but I was able to slide that from light to dark level to get what I'm looking for. And I think I saw here I really wanted a more brighter white for the shoes, so it looks a lot better. The shoes are kept very basic in this model that we're working on, because I'm not very confident on how shoes should look or how to model them. So I went with something simple that's quick and easy to build. And we have like a dark sole for the top of the shoe. As you can see here, I lost my white color for my shoe, so I had to like try to match it again. But I went to the other saves that I have for white, and I found it again. So my kind of like not great fix around is just take many samples of the color you want to use. So if one of them changes, you can go back to another one, keep what you got. And we're now on to rigging. So rigging is going to be the last topic we're covering today. I found it to be like pretty simple and I'm pretty confident with this. We're not going to get into texture painting because I spent like probably 3 hours just messing up over and over, and it's just not something I'm comfortable in. So we're just going to do basic rigging. My recommendation is as you add these bones, you want to set names for these bones so that you later can mirror the weight painting. This will save you a lot of time. Like, do not start weight painting until you make sure one is mirrored onto the other side, especially for symmetrical characters. That's kind of my problem. Once you start getting into it, it's actually a really pain in the ass to get the mirror back. And just setting the bones like right now is perfectly fine because it doesn't really matter yet. We're not into texture painting. And we're going to use automated weights just to give us like a rough, just to give us what we would expect for our weights. I mean, and in the show you had to apply it. We're just going to start with a cube right here, and then you go to automatic apply, and yeah. And thank you for watching today's video. I hope you learned something, and have a good day.